Finding affordable or at least reasonably priced housing across Bennington County can be challenging, and that's not a new phenomenon. Many developers say they can't make a profit building low-cost or workforce housing, meaning that many people who work in Bennington County can't afford to buy homes or rent apartments in the county, a pattern highlighted in the North Shire Economic Development Study commissioned in 2015. Not much has apparently changed since then. But it's an ongoing problem that is frequently cited, and municipal officials and those in the housing business are keenly aware of it. On Thursday, March 21st, the Bennington County Regional Commission held a meeting at Sunderland's Town Hall and brought together several housing experts from Shires Housing, Bennington County Habitat for Humanity, and NeighborWorks of Western Vermont to discuss and analyze the issue. Susan Sommer of Bennington County Habitat for Humanity gave an overview of the mismatch between housing demand and availability at the meeting.
The housing wage that people need in Bennington County, according to the Out of Reach report, and is, for example, an hourly wage in order to pay for fair market rent is $19.31 an hour, which means, and the fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is $1,004 a month. Now that includes your rent. That's for, no, this is for Bennington County, yes. And that includes, when you're talking about affordable housing, it should be no more than 30% of your monthly income or your annual income. And for renting, that includes your utilities. And for home ownership, that includes what you pay for your mortgage and then for your taxes and your homeowner's insurance. So for renting, you would have to, for a 2-bedroom apartment, pay about $1,004, which means the annual income you would need is $40,160. You'd have to have about 1.8 jobs to be able to afford that, or have another person in the household who's working. If you look at the public assets report, which came out as well in 2018, what I find troubling from that report, and this is called the State of Working Vermont 2018 report, is that nearly 2/3 of Vermont households with incomes under $50,000 paid more than 30% of their income toward housing in 2017, an increase from 10 years earlier in 2007. This increase was driven by the rise in the share of renter households in unaffordable housing. Over 70% of these households are cost burdened, compared with 60% of owner-occupied households. I submit that those two percentages are totally unacceptable. Whether it's 70% of renters who are cost burdened or 60% of homeowners, I mean, how does anybody think they're going to come to Vermont and work? How do any of the businesses here think they're going to attract people to Vermont if there is no affordable place to live?
David Adolphus of NeighborWorks and Stephanie Lane of Shires Housing also helped describe the problem.
Do a half a dozen houses, that's a lot of money to leave in a house. So we are attempting to come up with some partnerships with the state, municipalities, and local businesses to put together some package where we could work with homeowners to buy houses in disrepair and perform repairs on them in some manner that's both sustainable and affordable for the organizations involved and the homeowners. This is a difficult proposition, and it requires a lot of participants, and it requires a lot of investment, if not monetarily, at least structurally, from towns to have a willingness to do this. As I hope you know, we have a very old housing stock in Southwest Vermont. We have some of the poorest communities in the state. The downtown Bennington census block is the second poorest in the state of Vermont, second lowest income. So that's a tough combination of factors. Old housing stock, old houses are expensive to live in, they're expensive to fix, they're expensive to maintain, and they're expensive to rehab, sometimes prohibitively expensive. So coming up with ways to do that is not something any one entity can do.
things as well. And
We've renovated the exteriors. It's been strictly, the rehab itself was a strict energy rehab, and then 6 units were completely redone for ADA, accessible units. So we are now going back in to look at the interiors that were not addressed. We've done 40 so far though, so
Yeah.
we're doing pretty well. Yeah, it's been a definite learning experience. It's definitely unlike any other project that we have in our portfolio.
Manchester has been making some efforts to encourage developers to construct more housing by changing up some of the zoning requirements, said the town's planning director and zoning administrator, Janet Hurley.
We increased building heights in the core. We increased residential density allowances in the core substantially from, I think our limit was around 4 units per acre, and now it's 10 in much of the core, and even in some of the commercial mixed-use areas downtown, it's not limited. You can have as many units on a parcel as you can fit and still comply with the other zoning restrictions, such as setbacks and heights. We gave density bonuses for underground parking and the provision of affordable or workforce housing. We provided a definition for workforce housing that expands what the federal definition is, because we understand in Manchester that our problem is not just affordable and workforce under the federal definition, but it's much broader. And so our definition in the ordinance for workforce housing includes housing that is up to 250% of area median income, whereas the federal definition is 120. And basically what that would allow is for bonuses for housing that is aimed not just at the lower income, but also that's aimed at the a household that is made up of, say, 2 parents, each of which earn $60,000 to $70,000 a year, because even for households that are earning $150,000 a year, you cannot find housing that's priced within reach in this town.
Housing availability is also a big issue in Arlington, said Jim Baker, who is currently heading up the Arlington Area Renewal Project.
You know, we've been looking at various issues that drive things like the viability of the community, the vitality of the community. How do you bring younger folks into a community? And we keep coming back to the fact that there's a lack of good quality housing in Arlington proper and the Arlington area in general. We recently did a survey, informal survey of businesses in the area, and you often talk to people, and the first thing you'll hear them say is, well, we need more jobs. And what we have come to the conclusion through the renewal project is that we don't need jobs. In fact, in the town of Arlington, collectively, just in the boundaries of Arlington, not taking into consideration Sunderland, where Orvis is housed, or the building where GNAT is, between the supervisor union and GNAT, just in the town of Arlington, there's about 1,000 employees. And the vast majority of those employees don't live in town. So they come here, they work, they make a living here, and then they take the money they make here and they leave. And it presents several problems. First of all, some of them don't even live in state. So the money they're earning goes into an economy outside of the town of Arlington. That's number one. Number two, we face this challenge of keeping the census up in our school. Well, the lack of housing doesn't allow us to grow our school population because there is not good quality housing for families to come. I was just talking to someone today who's employed in the area and lives in town and has 2 children, one in the school system, one will be going into the school system soon. There's two coworkers who are looking for housing in Arlington and they can't find it because they're looking for around the $200,000 range. And a few months back, we did we did a roundtable with realtors, and what we heard from them was they have customers lined up to come to Arlington because of the quality of the school system, but they can't find housing, and the number they gave was around the $200,000 range. So it really impacts the ability for you to grow your town, grow your economy. It also impacts other things that probably people don't see. Our fire department and rescue squad and our service clubs are hurting for members. Well, if you don't have younger folks moving into town, your chances of filling those ranks as volunteers, or if you're trying to do committee work, say volunteers at the farmer's market, the pool of candidates become very small. And so we see housing as a big, big issue. And so that's why we're going to be doing a housing summit in June, where we do some panel discussions, focus in on the issues, and then the plan is to generate a report that'll come back to the select board and other folks with a strategy moving forward on how we can increase housing.
Shortages of housing are a statewide problem, not one just confined to Bennington County. It's one we'll be taking additional looks at as to how the need can be met and what incentives might be needed to move the needle. I'm Andrew McKeever, reporting for the GNAT-TV News Project.